Hey guys, it is overdue, like everything, but it is time to talk about everything we read in January. Hey guys, if you are new here, welcome to the Book Path. I'm Nicole, and if this isn't your first rodeo, thanks for sticking around. So yeah, we are filming this, I think the second week of February. Like I said, I am still working on trying to get back up to date. There has just been a lot going on around us, weather-wise, school-wise. We've got, I think, a winter break coming up for school. So once again, I'm like, the kids just went back and already they're having a winter break here. I'm not used to it. I am part of the generation that you had Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, and then spring break, and that was it. And I'm like, so throwing an extra week-long break in there now for winter, it's just kind of like, this is what we call, at least in my family, like you have the first part of the school year, because school year starts for us in August. So you have like August, September, October with like pretty regular, you're going to school all the time, and then most of November. And once you get to Thanksgiving week, we start calling it now, well, now we're in the vacation part of the school year, because you'll have Thanksgiving for a week. You have the Christmas or holiday break for like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, pending where they fall. And then in like February, you get a week-long winter break, and then they get their spring break. And then it's like only like 4 weeks or something, 4 or 5 weeks after spring break, they're out of school, because we get out of school at the end of May. So it's just like the kids are constantly home, love being with them. We are starting to explore fun learning activities and things to kind of do while they're home so they don't get bored. But it also wrecks the house and all those other wonderful things that you spend time once they're back in school trying to do, which is what I've been trying to keep up with now. It's just, you throw a few storms and snow days in there, and yeah. But that's your news update, I guess, for what's going on here. But we did do some books for January. The good thing is all of these books we were able to use in some way, shape, or form for at least one of our challenges that we're trying to conquer. The Romantasy Bingo, as we know, is coming up to a close, so trying to rush and get those ones picked. Those ones kind of tend to be the priority picks for anything. We have the Romantasy Bingo board that we're trying to do, and we also have the Romantasy, or the Romanceopoly board, that we are trying to conquer. So I was really happy that all of these were able to fit at least 1 or 2 prompts that we could start checking off a few things and building up a good start to the year. Now, I didn't read a lot this year. I am still kind of going slowly through things. I'm trying to find, you know, my first 5-star of 2026. So let's go ahead and see what we did. So first up, I picked up The Wren and the Holly Library by K.A. Lind. I had heard really, really good things about it. I wanted to read it so bad. It was a beautiful copy of the book. It sounded really interesting. So I finally was excited to get to read it. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was what it was for me. I ended up having a lot of questions about things by the end of this book. The world that's going on in this book is really interesting, that you had the kind of war that you have the humankinds versus paranormal beings or supernatural beings. And this kind of happens in New York, and now they're kind of coexisting there, but it's never explained if this is going on all around the world, because you hear little bits about scenarios and cities and things that are like them in other parts of the world. But you also hear a lot about like the rest of USA coming to visit New York now as a touristy destination. So it doesn't make it known if this is going around all over the world or just in New York. So that was a little interesting there. There were a few like rules and laws within the world that they were touched upon, but they weren't fully developed for me. And so it just kind of, when things were going on in the plot wise, I was like, okay, but is this supposed to happen this way? Or how can this happen this way when all these other kind of rules are saying this? So it was kind of like that for me. Our main female character, Kierce, she's a thief. She's human, and she has grown up with a pretty tragic backstory to her. She lives in kind of this attic with two of her friends who also have similar tragic pasts and things, and they're kind of this found family. And she is tasked with stealing from this rich person's home. And once she breaks into his home, she discovers that he is like a mage and a warlock, and he actually notices something about her that she doesn't understand or know herself. And this is Graves, and he has all this magic. He's extremely powerful, extremely good looking. And Kyr's kind of drawn to him as he is drawn to her, and he basically strikes up a bargain of helping her basically be free of all the things she's kind of going through, with enough money to kind of take care of her and her two friends so they can kind of get out of what life has seemed to put in their path and just be happy. And so she's now living in his like kind of mansion, and the Holly Library is inside the mansion, and it's kind of, it feels almost like warped space in there because it's this huge library in what should be a small room, and it's got like holly trees everywhere and vines going everywhere, which I loved. I loved the library. And it's just kind of what they're trying to do and what he needs her to steal, as well as her discovering who she might be and what her powers may be. So I liked aspects of it. Like, I liked the plot ideas. It's just, like I said, how they were kind of carried out. There's not a lot of time spent on her learning how to wield her powers. There's not a lot of time spent on this basic heist that they're trying to do. It's all kind of pushed towards the end, and they have very little time to figure out a plan, and yet somehow miraculously they have this like really developed plan. So I'm like, I wish there would have been a little bit more attention to that. Kyr's was interesting, but emotionally I didn't feel pulled into her at all. So it's just kind of like whatever happens to her. The same with Graves. Like, I felt a little bit more pulled in for Graves, but I felt like we were missing a lot more of who he was. So the emotional connections with them, for me, it didn't ring full on like romance. It was more of a physical desire bound with like maybe a touch of loving and understanding, that, but a lot of that came at the end. So it was what it was for me for those types of reasons. Like I said, I had a lot of questions about the world. I had a lot of questions on why it didn't feel as developed plot-wise in terms of the heist potential that this could have had. I do have the sequel to the book already because, like I said, I had heard wonderful things. So when I saw the sequel on sale, I ended up picking it up. I do want to continue with it because I think there's enough there to warrant picking up the second book. Maybe some of the questions I had about the world will be answered in the second book. And there is enough questions about some of the other characters that I want answered that I'm hoping that will happen in the second book as well. So I do plan on continuing the series, and maybe the second book will pick up and be better for me. But for me, it was a 3-star, wasn't horribly bad, had some interesting points to it, some very interesting scenes. But just overall, like I said, I was left kind of wanting. So I did read this one. The good news is that for this book, it fulfilled the Our Fantasy Bingo Board prompt, where the original prompt was to read a biopunk. I'm not really into that, so I used my one change square option that they let you do, and I changed it for the 2018 Fantasy Bingo Square that said to read a fantasy book that takes place in a library. And I mean, it even has the library on the title. So we ended up using this one for that. I was also able to use this in the Romanceopoly challenge for the Register's Office, which is part of the kind of common standards, your basic generic classes that everybody has to take. So I took this one for the Register's Office, which was to read a new to you author, and I hadn't read anything by K.A. Lind, so filled that prompt as well. Now, the rest of the books for the month were all ebooks. So my Kindle and my tablet got a lot of use this month for that fact. Basically, first up, we got an arc of kind of a prequel to a series that has already existed. And it was really interesting. This was The Healer and the Warlord by S.E. Grayson. This is a desert setting kind of fantasy, which is not my forte. Like, I don't really like desert settings because I love rich landscapes. I love the forest. I love the plant life, and I love seeing that discussed in the stories. So to have just like a desert, vast, just sandbanks and dunes, for me, that's not as exciting as a story. But this book worked. Like, it was very interesting, and basically you have this world where there are different desert tribes, and one of them is Kelvar. He is a warrior. He is pretty much the strongest warrior in almost any tribe, and he is going out of his way secretly to go and kidnap the, I guess you could call her the princess of another tribe, and bring her back to his warlord to use however he wants, to basically get what they need from this other tribe and go from there. But when he kidnaps her, and her name is Alex, he right away is captivated. She's beautiful. She is kind. She does have a little bit of a backbone to her, but it's in a reserved way, where in her tribe, she is very much the women are meant to just be like seen and not heard. Her father loves her, but is very disciplined in that. She is also kind of kept from showing her gift, because the desert does grant gifts to people it deems worthy. The desert almost has this like own spiritual life to it. Like they keep referring to, like, I think of the goddess or the god, and that they're granted gifts, and she has an extreme healing ability where she can basically heal almost anything. And Kelvar is basically, through his emotions, he can control like lightning and storms and how that affects everything. So they are both extremely powerful. And of course, as they're going as this kind of kidnapped situation, riding through the desert starts playing tricks on them, where it's not taking the typical like day it would take to get from point A to point B. They're kind of lost, and they're at the mercy of the desert until the desert decides to put them on the right path. So, and you start to understand that the desert might be doing this to bring these two together for more than they understand. So it was really interesting. I liked the fact that it was very character focused on their relationship, and how it was kind of this captor-captive start to where you're, even though you might be attracted, you're trying to cut that off because, you know, situationally this shouldn't be happening. But then how that starts to be understanding and respect and care, and then it turns to, you know, I do want something, but I shouldn't for all these reasons, and then it's like I don't care anymore. So it was just, it kind of kept going through that. I loved it. I loved both characters. I was really rooting for them, and I kind of, you know, I ended up giving it 4 stars because there were parts where it just felt like it was kind of going a little bit too long in their travels. I was like, come on, let's. I know that they're getting together, and I liked them kind of understanding each other as the part of the story, but I also wanted them to, you know, what happens? Are they going to get tracked down by her father? What happens when they get to the encampment of, you know, Kelvar? Like, what's going to happen? And I was kind of anticipating that. And when that aspect did happen, it was very, very quick, but it was like boom, boom, boom with the action. And some of it was, I'm still trying to grapple with how believable it was towards the end of the story. It was fascinating. I'm just trying to think of like, how does that really work? And you kind of have to take it with this is the way that this world is just going to work, and you're going to just have to have that. But it was really good. I do plan on now going into the story, because I think the actual story that this was a prequel for is what's happened in this story is now like the myth, and it's years later, centuries later, I'm not sure. And then you have this other story that takes place in the actual series. So I am curious. I did like the way it was written. And I'm hoping that because the regular series is not like a prequel size, you're going to get much more involvement in the worlds and how things are going. So I did like that. I was happy because we were able to use this in Romanceopoly for an elective course for fantasy theory. My major is, I think it is paranormal romance, and my minor is dark romance. So you can choose electives from the other courses, which is like, I think like contemporary romance, historical romance, and fantasy. So I chose from fantasy, and I did the Battle and Bond, which was basically a story that featured a warrior, a warlord, an assassin, or protector. And right away in the title, you have the healer and the warlord, and he is a warrior, and he does turn protector. So like it felt very, you know, I could use this one. So we did use that one and got that elective out of the way. Next up, we had another arc. This was a sequel to a book that I had arced last year, which was Gravetide by Ivy Whittaker. So now we have book 2 in that series, and that is The Fall by Ivy Whittaker. This is a paranormal romance. This is a wolf shifter clan kind of romance. And I'm going to try not to give too much away, but you basically have this girl, Karina, who she was involved in an accident that gave her sort of amnesia about the incidents of that night. She doesn't know. All she knows is that when she wakes up, she now is a wolf shifter. So you have Avery, who has reached out to her from this like wolf pack that helps people kind of understand their shifter selves and get in tune with their wolves, and almost like a therapy type sense. So she goes up there, and sadly there is a lot more going on with this wolf pack that merges on questionable legalities of their actions, and she's kind of thrust into that world. There is an age gap romance between Karina and Avery going on, all the while Karina is becoming best friends with Avery's daughter, who is about the same age as him. I mean, same age as Karina. The sequel is kind of picking up after some times. You have Karina and Avery struggling with their relationship because not only are they worried about what Avery's daughter will say, but they already know they have targets on their back from other people in the pack, and they're trying to figure out what is kind of going on illegally within the pack, so that way they might be able to use it as a bargaining chip to either destroy the pack and make the pack anew with the good members that are still there, or be able to use it as like a bargaining chip to escape, because this is like pack life. Like, you are here for life, you don't leave the pack. So they're trying to go through that, and there is a lot of kind of toxic behaviors, toxic elements. There's a lot of things where I'm just kind of like, the ideas that they come up with to try to figure things out, in my mind, are not the best of ideas, and you can already see how things are going to backfire for them, but it goes on. I do love the daughter. She's like part witch, and she's just kind of fun, and I really do like her and appreciate her character. I'm still kind of trying to figure out how I feel about Karina, because sometimes I like her, sometimes I don't. Avery as the main hero, and he's supposed to be like one of the stronger people in the pack, but he kind of lives to himself. He just feels weaker to me. Like, I haven't really seen the full strength and protectiveness he's gonna get for her. It seems a lot of the time that like she's doing the protecting, or she's kind of throwing herself out there. So I'm not sure how I feel about like those kind of things. I mean, I want them together. I want them to just kind of be together and be happy and be done with it. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, you know, this is the girl you're saying you're loving, and you're more in tune with your wolf, man, you know, step it out. But he's so restrained in a lot of things, that restrained and reserved, I would say, in a lot of ways, that you're just waiting for a little bit more to kind of come through on him, but it's still a good series. I did kind of enjoy this one more than I would say I enjoyed Grimtide, just because you knew the back plot to the story. You kind of already were thrown in, and so when this is just kind of continuing, it was just the action kind of plot points that were going on, whereas the first part you're kind of introing into it and understanding the world. The other part that I didn't really like in this book is I felt that more of the plot of this book had to deal with what is going on in the pack and not so much what is going on with her recovering her memories. We still don't know what is going on with her memories, who turned her, what is going on there, and it's feeling really kind of dragged out. Like, I want to know, like, tell me who did that, what is going on, because that obviously is going to have a lot to do with the plot and, you know, what's going on there. Because, I mean, if we get to another book and we still don't know why, I'm going to almost be wondering, like, what's the point of her not even remembering, because so much of the plot can be carried out without that aspect right now. But like I said, I still enjoy the story. It is kind of a more tortured story, if you would, if I can use that for it. But curious to see where this series is going to go. It did leave off on a little bit of a cliffhanger. Like I said, I ended up giving it 4 stars. With everything, all the problems that I was kind of finding in it, I still did enjoy reading it. There is a lot of spicier moments in this book than there were in the first book. So if spice is something you're liking, if shifter spice is something you're liking, go with it. If spice is something you're not going with, you might be skipping a few pages just so you can stick more with the plot, but I didn't mind it. So this one ended up filling for a prompt for a Romanceopoly as well. And this was actually for our major, for a paranormal romance major. And that was the lycanthrope major, which is werewolves. And that is basically to read a shifter romance, which it was shifters. It was wolf shifters. I mean, it literally fits the prompt. Lycanthropy, werewolves, wolf shifters. Perfect. So we went ahead. We got one of our major classes done. So yay. So next up, I ended up picking up The Orc and the Innkeeper by Cora Crane. This was so cute. I usually get bored with some of like the more cozy romances. They're just kind of cutesy. I need a little bit of like an action, a little bit of a twist. But this one, I just really kind of adored. Basically, you have Mariah, who is a human that exists in this village or town that is filled with all sorts of fantasy beings. And you have different parts of the world that do have places like this. They're trying to kind of integrate all the fae creatures and humans together to kind of coexist. It's not always done peacefully. There is a lot of discrimination and prejudices talked about in this, as well as a fantasy, like that's set in a fantasy world. And Mariah has grown up being prejudiced against because she is pretty much the only human to have gone to the school with some of these kids. She has grown up, she had been bullied at the school, and she is in the village. She takes over the inn for her parents, and she loves this inn, and the inn is kind of falling apart. So she's trying to struggle to find money to basically keep the inn going. And in walks Thorak, and Thorak is this orc. He is big, he is apparently extremely handsome for an orc. And he sees Mariah. Now, the backstory with them is Thorak used to bully the crud out of Mariah in school, and she despises him. When you learn Thorak's backstory and kind of why he bullied her, while I don't condone the bullying or the prejudice, I understand how he could have been made to act the way he did. Especially when there are secrets he's harboring, so to speak, because he is not at all opposed to Mariah. In fact, it's very much the opposite. And you hear that because this is a dual POV story. And basically, Thorak runs a brewery. He is separated from his family's brewery and struck out on his own. And he is trying to bring his brews to the human world. And in order to do that, he needs kind of a human representative to work between the Fae side and the human side. And the human that gets involved is extremely prejudiced against Fae creatures. So once again, like I said, everybody's kind of got these struggles they're going through to learn acceptance and things, which I thought was a great message in the book. And he ends up telling the human representative that he is engaged to a human. And he does this because the representative is like, I need to know that there's at least one human that works in your brewery or handles some of your brewery things or is aware of it, to feel comfortable with bringing this to the human world. And Mariah kind of overhears this. She knows Thorak is not hurting for money, and so she decides to bribe the situation a little bit by like, hey, I'll pretend to be your fiance if you will give me so and such money to help take care of the inn. And so you have this fake fiance, fake marriage trope that's kind of coming your way. All the while, both of them are going to develop feelings or already have had feelings for each other, and how that fits, like I said, with the prejudices that go against each other, and how these two people can be together, or these two beings can be together. Thought it was really cute. It has a few spicy scenes that are open door, but they're done in a way where it's quick, and I don't think it was overly spicy, but it is detailed spice. So I mean, but it's not like anything taboo, I would think. So I mean, read about it, check it, and go on that. But I really enjoyed it. I do plan on continuing with the series. There's some other books in the series, and I do want to kind of read those because I really did enjoy the world and the cuteness and the coziness of it. So I liked it. 4 stars for me. And what I loved is this was one of our fantasy picks for a cozy book pick. So check. And then we also used this in Romanceopoly for joining the Nightshade Society as one of our club picks. And this was for Into the Shadows, to read a romance with a monster as the main love interest. And I did check, and they were saying that orcs count as part of a monster romance. So it works. We are going with it. Prompts fulfilled. Yes. And for our final pick of January, we ended up reading A Deal with the Elf King by Elise Kova. This one I ended up giving 4 stars. It was interesting. There were some plot points that I wished would have gone on because I felt like everything started getting a little monotonous. There wasn't a lot of action or points going on. Basically, you have this world where there is a veil between the elf world and the human world, and every 150 years or so, the elf king comes and he claims a human bride, and the human bride is basically never seen from again. She comes, well, I shouldn't say that. She comes like during a few months out of the year to visit her family, and then she goes back. But for the most part, she now resides on the elf side. So you have Luella, who is a healer and like an herbal practitioner in her village. She's kind of in love with a childhood friend, and the Elf King is now finally coming to claim his bride. Nobody knows who it could be because usually the girl is supposed to show some sort of magical powers, but nobody's done that yet. So they're very curious to see who it could be. Luella's like, it can't be me. I have no gifts whatsoever. I'm just a basic healer. I come from a poor family. And she feels very indebted to this village because they did help pool money together to send her to like this healing academy to learn her skills. But when the Elf King comes, he notices her when she is healing somebody that it's not all herbal stuff. There is a gift to her, and you find out that something she had in her possession from her childhood sweetheart was masking her powers. So it was really her all along. And so she gets taken to the elf world to become the human queen. And you find out that there is, the elf world is basically dying, and the human queen's power over life kind of gives back to that world, but it drains the human queen in the process. This is kind of for me, it was like a Hades Persephone retelling, because he is the elf king. Eldest is kind of representative of like the warrior or protector against death and the death realm, and kind of over those things, and he keeps that power at bay. And she is the power over like spring growing and bringing life back to the land. So very much a Hades and Persephone kind of shift in this story. They are trying to find a way to break this cycle so that the elf kingdom can survive and thrive without the need of a human queen, and she can go back to living her life, all the while they are feeling attracted to one another. This is an extremely slow burn romance, extremely slow burn, to the point where you're just like, but the world is really kind of interesting in the layers upon it, because I had read another book in this series. I read book 2 before I read book 1. Each of these can kind of be read as a standalone, but now I'm recognizing the world at large for this series, and it is really interesting. But for the elf kingdom and the way that the elf kingdom works, it's not one that I don't know if I'd want to really stay there. I have a feeling that now that things have played out the way they are, things are going to get better. But there is some prejudice against the humans, and there's prejudice against the elves, almost to an enemies to lovers type of thing. There is a lot of sorrow as well when you start to understand what Eldest has been through his whole life training to be the elf king, and the misconceptions that have kind of gone on both ends. So it is kind of a slow burn, enemies to understanding to teammates, like we're going to work together to break this, to lovers type in here. The twist at how to break the I don't want to say spell, but what's going on with the human queen and the giving of the powers seemed very just unfulfilling to me. It seemed very basic to me. I wanted there to be something a little bit more to it. It just, like, I wanted there to be more clues to figuring out and then getting to it to build up. Where it just felt like it was a lot of like them just reading about certain things, and in the end she's like, oh, I came to the conclusion, and it was just kind of like, okay, I get it, a little underwhelming, but I get it. And then kind of the big confession moment was a little silly as well, but I'm like, at this point I liked the world. I kind of was like, okay, I get where they're going with this. I think right now I prefer the second book in the series, which I think was like a dance with the demon king or something like that. It was like a dance with something, or the Fae king or something. And I did kind of like that one. That one felt a little bit darker and more action packed for me. But this one was decent, and you got this kind of introduction to the way the world worked, which I kind of skipped over because I read book 2 first. But I did end up giving it 4 stars because there was enough there that I was like, this is pretty interesting, keeping me going to the end. There were characters in the story that I did like. Sometimes I got annoyed with some of the characters, but they did redeem themselves. And there was interesting parts to it that I did like and enjoy. So I do recommend if you're looking for an elf romance. I don't have a lot of elf romances, so this was one that I had. I ended up using this. I switched it out. There was another book that I had in this position for the Romantasy Bingo for the elves and dwarfs. I can't remember it at this time. If I know it, I will put it up here so you can see what it was. And then I ended up switching it to the deal with the elf king instead, and went with that one. This one also fulfilled the Romanceopoly pick for the Rune Hall. This was for the fantasy elective again, and this was a fantasy romance with a unique magic system or slow burn. And I felt that this had bits of both. There was an extreme slow burn romance going on, and I felt that there was a unique magic in the thing, that not everybody had magic, and that the magic could be like absorbed into the land and things like that. So I felt that was a little bit more on the unique side, so we ended up using it for that. So yeah, basically that is everything that we read for the month of January. We were able to fulfill a lot of prompts, so that is good for us because we are making some headway on our challenges, and we'll just continue to go at it and see what we can get done before these challenges are over. Obviously, Reddit Fantasy is coming quickly to a close, so we kind of get on it for that one. I don't know if I'll do a full blackout board, but we're gonna see what we read and what we can get done, and maybe hopefully we'll get a bingo, or maybe we'll just shock ourselves and get the blackout at this point, but we will go from there. So anything, I hope that your January was full of some fantastic reads. I still have yet to find a 5-star read, but we shall see what February brings. And yeah, so hopefully your year's starting off with just a lot of fun. Hopefully the weather is cooperating with you guys now. We are starting to get some warm weather on the horizon, so yay. And just stay warm, stay cool, whichever your weather is dictating. Same with your drinks, may they be warm or cool, depending on how you need your hydration. And just hopefully everything's bringing you some goodness. So with all that being said, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.